Hey guys, welcome back to the Pizza Story podcast. Today I'm here with Jeff Christian from Pizza Days. And I actually was just on his podcast last week. And now here we are again having another podcast. So, hey, Jeff, welcome. Thank you for being here.
So excited to get to just share space with you and talk about something we both love so much and has had a huge impact on our lives and the many lives that we come across. So, yeah, excited for the show.
Yeah, me too. We get to continue our conversation here. So, I want you to tell me the very beginning of how Pizza Days started and what Pizza Days is.
Yeah, man, it's going to be a long time. I'm going to try and cut down everything and see if I can make sense of it. But we've hosted students through Rotary Youth Exchange. And we had the good fortune of going to France, Switzerland, and Italy and spend time with our amazing students. And just being over in Europe, I was really taken back by the appreciation of family and taken back by how they use their meal times, specifically dinner, to really just slow life down and embrace each other and celebrate just this one meal that they have and just have so much fun. And so, I have a family myself and we've always grown up having family meals, but this just took it to a whole nother level, which I had no idea that that's how life was, over there. And I'm generalizing, but it was what I saw. And so when I came back, I've done nonprofit work. I'm a registered nurse is what I've done for my career for 30 plus years, working with a lot of people that are pretty sick in a level 1 trauma center, people that shot, stabbed, bad car accidents. And so been surrounded by death, which is a big part of me wanting to give back through my nonprofit. So this is a second nonprofit that I've started, and it's about leadership and kind of self-development. And I decided after this trip to Europe that I wanted to use pizza to help people make sense of life and for us to hurry up and get to what's most essential in figuring out this thing called life, and then using that space to help people just kind of see each other and listen to each other and love each other. And so I decided, get back. I'm going to find a pizza oven. I'm going to find a truck. I'm going to start writing books. I'm going to host this podcast, and we're going to get out into the world and try and bring people together one slice at a time.
I absolutely love that. And you and I have so much in common because we're both using this means of pizza to spread love and to put out a positive message. So tell me, how does Pizza Days work?
Yeah, that's a good question because we're grassroots, and it's interesting because we charge money for what we do, but everybody that's involved with the nonprofit is a volunteer, including me. And so we're a little bit, this might come across wrong, but we're a little bit selective because a lot of people reach out to us and want us to just come cater and bring pizza for them.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That's not what we do. We will do that with the understanding of, hey, this is going to be about a 4 to 6 hour time period where we're going to take a deep dive in looking at life and figuring out, hey, what are those essential ingredients that we all bring to the table and that we can share and add to each other's life recipes, so to say. And we do intentional activities that kind of, I'll use the word force, but force people to kind of get out of their own way, take a step back and say, hey, well, what is that ingredient? And is it something that I even want on my life recipe, or am I doing it just by habit and that ingredient no longer serves its purpose? And so, it's powerful by the time we're done to have people kind of take a step back again and say, hey, am I living the life I want to live? Yes, keep going. No, I just gained a bunch of different perspective. Let me kind of go back and look at my recipe, so to say. And so I didn't answer your question, but we do have a website. I just say when people need us, they find us. And then we go on from there.
I love that. It's awesome. Can you take me through one of your favorite or your most memorable events?
Man, one of the most memorable, we had a company out of Louisville. And this is what's crazy. And where it goes back to, people find us when they need us. They're coming out to, I live in Northern California, and I'm right in between Sacramento and San Francisco. And so then that gets us close to Napa. And Napa is where they make wine and ship it all over the world. And so a lot of businesses will come into that area. And then pizza happens to pair amazing with wine and other spirits. And so this company from Louisville came out and wanted me to do a program for their staff, team building, leadership development. Again, that's what we do. And so we were down by the Russian River, and I just pulled, somehow there was a gate, and I wasn't supposed to be there, but I opened up the gate, drove the truck down this kind of pretty narrow road, and then got down, and we were like probably 20 feet from the river. And that's what's so cool about what we do, is we bring the table to you, and be able to get around just some natural elements, which is what makes what we do so powerful too, with fire. People have used fire for thousands of years to gather around and tell stories and come together and cook. And so to have fire and water right there, and then just to create the space, we have everything we need inside us as a species. And when we can create the space for each other to be seen, heard, and loved, which is what our nonprofit mission is, then you just let life happen, and I believe good things happen. But that one, and, I don't know if you can see it, but I took a rock, from the water, and I use this, and it sits on my desk here, and it's just a reminder just to get back into that space. If life for me starts to get moving too fast, I just have to look over and see that and reach my hand back in the water and feel that coldness and just see what the time has done to that rock. And I don't want to get too carried away, but that one for me is definitely one that I tap into to just get back and say, hey, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know that we talked about when we're having the meal, we're not just eating food. There's a connection there, and there's a deeper meaning to having that meal together. And it's the memories that we're creating and what we learn from each meal that we have with each other, which is why I think Pizza Days is so special, because it's not just like you're eating pizza.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And we're different too, being a nurse. And again, I don't know how it comes across, but I wanted sourdough pizza, which is a lot more work, because you got
Yeah.
to constantly nurture and feed that starter. But there's so many cool metaphors that go into just feeding the starter, and what are you doing on the daily to nurture your heart and soul? That's what I equate feeding the starter is, hey, what actions am I taking today to nurture my heart and soul, and then therefore being able to share that with the people that need it. And man, not to get too crazy, but we need that. The world is just in such an interesting place right now, with, I think, people starting to look more and more at just me,
Yeah.
not me, Jeff Christian, me as in just an individual. And we haven't evolved that way. It's always been about us. It's always been about we, which goes back into the first title. I have 2 children's books. The first title is We Rise Together, you
Yeah.
know, and so we're really trying to push that message out there. It is about us. It's about we, and there's plenty of pizza for everybody to eat, so to say, so, but it's back to, your comment, the nutrients that we put in our body. And then, like you, which is why I loved having you on the show, and how it's always been just homegrown, ingredients, and you guys making all your sauce and the basil. And it's just, fun. And then when you can take something that's tangible like that and then share it with somebody, it just means so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's get into your children's books. I want to hear about both the books a little more in detail and, the messages behind them.
Yeah, yeah. So the first one, and it's funny. I'm not a writer. I wanted to leave something for my kids, and if I have grandkids, and that's what books are kind of cool. Is legacy is too strong of a word, but I wanted, when I'm gone, I wanted my family to be like, this is kind of what Dad was about, or Grandpa was about. So the first one is a story. My mom, a little bit of the long story, but I have 8 brothers and sisters, and My dad was a great man and a hard worker, but he unfortunately let alcohol kind of drive a lot of his choices. And so my mom did all the heavy lifting, and she was always, and I grabbed that rock, and there's so much symbolization to this, but her nickname was the Rock, and she was that for everybody in our family. So the main character in the books that I write is Mrs. Rock. And so the main character again is in the spirit of my mom. And then I was blessed to have, when early in my nursing career, I worked in the school system, and there was this lady, Miss Diane Smooth, who was the superintendent, and I got to spend time with her on Tuesday and Thursday mornings, and we would just talk about life, and she gave me such a great education. I wanted to honor her through this series as well. And so the main characters in, the spirit of both of those powerful women. And anyways, yeah, so Mrs. Rock is just struggling, with her students. She's a third grade teacher, and she decides to use the pizza making process to help her students make sense of life. And so she challenges them to nurture their heart and soul. And so long story short, the students, and I probably have 8 or 10 different students that I follow in that story, and it shows them taking action to nurturing their heart and soul and kind of what it means to them, their family, and their community. Yeah, so fun. And it's, they're written for families, but every group that we work with uses the books, because I tried to write them so that the parents or the adults could get just as much out of them as the children. And really cool. The last thing I'll say, and I think we talked about this on a podcast, and the importance of family meals. And so a big part of that first book, I created this Feed the Starter family challenge. And so many good things come from when we just sit at the table together, even if we don't say a word, but just knowing that we're going to have that consistency in our life to be there for each other. And then should the time come where we have something going on that we need to share, that space, the table has already been set. And so this challenge is to challenge families to have 4 or more meals, preferably dinner when everybody can sit down, but we know life is busy, and where it's all hands on deck, just like you at DARCS,
Yeah.
Everybody's there to get the meals ready and clean up and so on and so the kids aren't sitting there. There's no phones around. That's not part of this equation. You're sitting there prepping, getting the dishes out, helping cook, cleaning up. And so, if we could do that, there's just so many great things that come, and a lot of evidence behind this. I'm a nurse, so most of the things that I try and do, I want evidence-based practice on, hey, what is the highest standard? And for people that are listening that have a family and have children, decreases high-risk behavior, increases academic performance, increases just communication skills because they're talking, decreases anxiety. I mean, there's probably about 10 different facts of all positive attributes and characteristics that come out from families just sitting at the table together. And the last thing I'll say, because I'm passionate about this stuff, but it's the number one indicator of just the family support system outside of socioeconomic status, outside of just being smart. But the number one indicator of student success is how often are you coming together as a family? And again, we've just talked about it for too long, but what it does for your children when you create that space for them. So too long on that one, but I get fired up about it.
No, listen, I could talk about that one for a long time because we've talked about it before, and you and I are on the same page. It creates so much stability for kids to have that dynamic there, and to sit down and to have dinner, and for someone to ask you about your day and really care about what's going on in your life. And that's how I grew up. I have 5 kids in my family, as you know. And my parents and my brothers and sisters, we were either working at the pizza shop together, or we were sitting down and having dinner. And even now as adults, the grandkids sit down, my parents sit down, and we have like a big, 14, 15 person table, and we're all eating together. It's extremely important.
Ah, I love it. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about that visual. Just powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's not just the food, and I love to eat, but it is definitely just being together. So speaking of eating, let's talk about your pizza. I love sourdough. I actually have a sourdough starter in my kitchen right now. And I know
Nice.
sourdough pizza is a lot more work. So I want to talk to you about your pizza process, what kind of pizza you make, and all that kind of stuff.
It's simple. Yeah, obviously sourdough, and then I try and partner locally. So there's a local mill, Capay Mill, in the next town over, and I add a 3% malted rye flour, and I use double
Wow.
zero Caputo. And that, when you're making that, first of all, it just smells. It just adds a little sweetness to when you're mixing in the flours. A little bit, it changes the color, just gives it a little bit more of a golden brown kind of color. And then to me, when you cook that and eat that, just a little touch of sweetness is with the sour makes it powerful. But yeah, we just make the basic pizza. We do, we make our own sauce, but we're not growing, unfortunately, like you, our own tomatoes. But I do get San Marzano, whole peeled and then crushed. And then several years ago, I used to use a hand blender in making the sauce, and I didn't realize it at the time, but it just watered it down a little bit. Not that that necessarily was a bad thing, but now I use what I just call a bean masher, and I mash, by hand with this little masher, the whole peeled tomatoes. And it's been a game changer. Something so simple like that. So
Wow.
the sauce is like a deeper red. It's got chunks of tomatoes in it. And then I add olive oil, fresh garlic, some Italian seasonings, salt, pepper, and red pepper flakes. I love
Gotta
spice.
have the red pepper
Yeah, a
flakes.
little bit of spice in there. And then my favorite pizza right now is just a simple margarita, and we'll use them. I love my sauce and it's very good, but I'll use just an olive oil base on that one, put the basil, and then we use sliced mozzarella, and then put that on top of the basil, and then just drizzle some of the red. I know you're making me hungry here. Some of the
I'm
red
getting hungry too.
on that. It's so simple.
Yeah.
But then you get to taste, everything. And the pizzas, we make ours in a wood-fired oven, so they only take 80 seconds. By the time I put it in there, it's about 750 degrees, and it's in and out. And so kind of less is more, so to say, because it's going to cook so fast. So that's my favorite. But we make, veggie, pepperoni. I'm not a meat eater, but depending on, what the group wants, sausage and then all different kind of vegetables. We grow our own basil and jalapenos and some
Wow.
simple tomatoes and oregano. Yeah. So less is more for me on the pizzas. Just keep it simple.
Yeah, that I'm exactly the same way. Every time I go to a pizza place, I have the plain margarita pizza first. I judge all the rest of the pizza on that, and then I'll move on to the other topping pizzas after that.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. We did have one group that wanted pineapple, and I was shook about it. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
man, nothing against people that like pizza with pineapple, but when it's so wet, and I try and stay away from toppings that are gonna kind of jack up how I cook the pizza, because when you cook it so fast and you have these wet ingredients, it just makes it a little bit soupier. And
Yeah,
so yeah,
it's
a little bit.
tricky.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
for sure.
It is. And that's one of the things I love about cooking pizza. And we've made, over 10,000 for sure. We've
Wow.
made a lot of pies. And with that said, I'll sound a little bit ignorant, but it's never the same. The weather, especially when you use wood fire, the weather changes, the humidity in the air, and that changes how your fire starts and gets going. And yeah, there's so many factors that go into it where you think, oh, you're just doing the exact same thing. No, the wood could be a little, yeah, which is what makes this fun. You don't get complacent, because as soon as you do, you're going to be off. And when you got 60, 70 people waiting and you're trying to coordinate and you need to have things go in a timely fashion, like you guys with a restaurant full of people, there's a big difference when those pies start taking, I don't know how long your guys take. If they're supposed to be out in 10 minutes and they're taking even 14 minutes per pie and you're kicking out, 100 of them, that's a huge difference. And so, yeah, so many factors that go into it.
Yeah, it follows life. You really never know what you're gonna get some days.
Yeah, yeah. Which is what another good lesson. There's just so many lessons, of we think we know what's going to happen. We have these expectations, we have these entitlements, and they're just all bad, and if we can try and just live more in the moment and have this flexibility to deal with what's, right in front of us, I think we'll all be better for it.
Absolutely. So, what does the future look like for Pizza Days?
Like you, I'm writing more books. Yeah, try. I got a lot of stories in my head, but I feel like the world is changing so fast right now. I'm slowing down to try and get something that's going to be withstand the test of time, I guess is the best way to say it. So I'm trying to pull that story from all the stories that I have and figure out what is the one that I want to share. But yeah, just continuing to do what we do, serve people when we're asked to serve, and yeah, just enjoy getting lost, in this process. It has really changed my life and how I see life.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if somebody wants to find you guys, where do they go?
That's a big ask right there. Yeah, we have a website, so you can go to pizzadays.org, and that's with a Y. We have the nonprofit is actually called C4 Leaders, like the explosive, C4leaders.org. And then we have an Instagram, but I don't do anything with that. I'm trying to stay so far away from technology right now. We have a podcast, keep tuning into this one. But if you want to get a different feel for something, it's called Life's Essential Ingredients, and that's on every platform that's out there. We're in our 5th season now, and I would love to have you tune in to that.
Yeah, you have a great podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, everyone should tune in. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to yeah. Then if you wanted to email me or whatever, yeah, it's just Jeff, Jeff at C4leaders.org.
All right. Well, Jeff, I really appreciate you being on the podcast. I love the story. I absolutely love the nonprofit and everything that you're doing. And if there's anything that we can do to help, please just give me a shout out. And guys, please follow him. Go to his website. He's doing some really, really cool things and helping a lot of people.
Thank you for the opportunity, and right back at you and your family and the whole legacy that Pietro has started for you. And I know everybody's going to continue to carry that on. So thank you for the opportunity, and keep doing all the great stuff that you're doing.